Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen makes OP's dinner really awkward. Karen demands to sit at my table in a restaurant. I go out quite regularly, usually once or twice a week, always to the same two restaurants, and if I'm not with my parents or friends or a special occasion, then I'm alone. Now, 2 weeks ago, I visited one restaurant. The waiter directed me to a table of 4. He knows my name in my usual order, and after a few minutes, he brings me my starters. The restaurant became full shortly after I entered, and all the tables were occupied. It was then, as I was eating my starters, that an older woman, around her 80s I'd say, came to my table, put down her bag on the chair opposite me without saying anything, and turned around to the waiter. She was a regular as well, started talking to him. The waiter could see the confusion on my face. She was facing him and couldn't see my face. I was to her back, but the waiter could see both her and myself, and I shook my head once to signal to him that I did not want some stranger sitting with me. He saw that and told the woman that all the tables are filled up right now, but in around 5 to 10 minutes there should be a free table for her. The woman then chuckled and said, "It's fine, I can sit here." He pointed out that she can't just sit down at some occupied table, which she dismissed, turning around to me, asking me with a smile on her face if I had a problem with her sitting with me. I just looked her in the eyes with a neutral expression and flat out, but not so that others could hear me, said yes. She didn't like that answer, got a bit angry. She didn't make a scene though. She grabbed her bag to wait in the restaurant's door. Well, as the waiter predicted, after around 5 minutes, there was a free table and she got to sit down and order. Now, while most of my friends, and also my parents, say that I didn't do anything wrong and that it was weird she was actually just gonna sit down there, some of my friends said that I am the jerk because I was sitting alone anyways, so why would it matter to me? It was just mean denying her a spot. Yes, I sat at a table for 4, but the waiter was the one that sat me there. And even if she was a regular, I've seen her face before, I just don't know her. It feels weird for me to eat or read a book while some stranger sits opposite me and watches me doing it. Also, while I don't know her personally, I do know she is quite a chatty one and most likely would have talked to me without end. I go out alone to have peace and quiet and enjoy some good food. But still, does declining that woman a place at my table make me a jerk? Not the jerk. You were directed to that table by the waiter. She was weird, intrusive, and rude to just dump her stuff there without asking you. As a fellow lover of solo date nights, I'd have done the same and declined to let her sit with me. She can wait her turn like everyone else. Not the jerk. As an introverted person, I am totally on your side, especially if she's a chatty person like you wrote. There's absolutely 0% chance that you would be left in peace to enjoy your meal. There's something inside a lot of people's heads that says, "OMG, how sad, a lonely person eating alone and reading a book. Well, I must go save them and give them someone to eat with. It's my moral duty as a human." They can't fathom that someone wants to eat or sit alone without constant small talk and chatter. You're the jerk. This younger generation is just sad. I don't think there's any way you can recover from this level of absolute low. Even when I go get the mail here at my apartment, if the other person getting theirs is under the age of 30, they don't even respond when I say hi. They just look at me bewildered. Oh crap, another human actually spoke to me. What am I supposed to do now? My advice to most of you on here, get off the internet and do things in the real world with real people. When you're so antisocial that you won't allow an 80-year-old woman to share your table at the restaurant when all the other tables are full and you're there alone, you're a jerk, regardless of what these antisocial basement dwellers are telling you. Technology has really ruined your entire generation. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for not letting her sit there or not? Please let us know. If this ever happened to me, I'd just start letting him rip. Sorry, my GI tract is really messed up. I'm sure you won't mind while we enjoy our meal. Am I the jerk for giving my brother's Discord to a girl without asking him? Last week, I, 21 male, took my brother, who's 15, to an anime convention in our state. It was my brother's first time going to one, and he's pretty nerdy to boot, so he had been very excited about going in the weeks leading up. My brother isn't a very social kid. By his own admission, he's a massive introvert. He doesn't have a ton of IRL friends, and on the drive up to the hotel room, he told me he wanted to make at least one friend during the weekend. I told him I'd help him if I could. Early in the second day of the convention, me and him are waiting in line for the dealer's hall to open, and in front of us is a girl about my brother's age, playing on a Nintendo Switch. I ask her what games she plays, and when she mentioned one that my brother, a huge Nintendo fanboy, had played, I say, "Oh, my brother here is a big fan of those too. Isn't that right, brother?" He sheepishly agrees, and to my surprise actually starts talking to the girl about the game, and then some other ones, before moving on to the other nerdy things they had a shared interest in. It was the most I'd ever seen my brother interact with a stranger, and it made me very happy to see. Eventually, the dealer's hall opens, and me, my brother, and the girl all end up at the same booth buying merch. As we're checking out, I point to the girl and ask what my brother thought. He just as sheepishly tells me that he thought she was cool and kind of cute. "You should go ask for her Discord. I bet she'll give it to you." "No," is all he says in response. When I press him on why, he says he's nervous about coming off as creepy, and besides, what if she says no? I tell him that as long as he isn't approaching her in a creepy way, then he probably doesn't have to worry about that. And if she says no, then she says no. That rejection is part of getting to know people, and learning to handle it well when you're young would be a big help for when he's an adult. He tells me no again, and by that time, the girl is gone anyways. Later during that day, me and my brother got separated, and I was walking around on my own. At some point, I noticed the girl at a booth, and I go up to her. I ask what she thought of my brother, and her response was remarkably similar to my brother's. She thought he was funny and cute, and wanted to talk to him more about Switch games. I offered to give her my brother's Discord, and she agreed. A few hours later, she finally messages him a simple, "Hey," with an introduction on how she got his Discord. My brother was upset. He immediately started telling me that it was a total breach of his privacy to give out his Discord without his permission. I pointed out that he had told me that he wanted to make friends at the convention and that I basically dropped one at his feet. He went quiet and was chilly around me for the rest of the day, but he was fine by tomorrow. That was a week ago. I did apologize to him, and it feels important to say that he and the girl are still talking daily. Was I the jerk for giving out his Discord without asking him? I apologized to him that night before we went to bed. Another thing to clarify, my brother never actually told me not to give out his Discord, just that he didn't want to ask for hers. His complaint about privacy only came after she messaged him. Not the jerk. You pushed him a little out of his comfort zone, and he reacted in a way someone who is incredibly introverted would. As long as you don't push stuff like that on him too far or too often, it's actually good for him. Little nudges are healthy for people like that, in my opinion. FYI, I'm a huge introvert. Surely you don't expect to get serious answers on this from the vast majority of Redditors who never leave their rooms. You analyzed the situation and did a proper older brother thing. Not the jerk. You're the jerk. You asked, and he gave a clear negative response, and you went over his head and did it anyway. It's not a massive issue, he'll get over it, but it's a pretty big breach of trust. Most people don't enjoy others making choices for them, even more so after they already said no. Well, what do you think? Was OP the jerk for sharing his brother's Discord or not? Please let us know. Good job, OP. We're making some progress. Next, let's see if we can get this boy to touch some grass. Am I the jerk for cutting off my kid's inheritance? Backstory. 2 years ago, I, 46 female, lost my husband in an accident, and I was heartbroken. We had 3 kids, and I thought we were very happy until his mistress showed up at my door demanding money to support the kid my husband fathered. I didn't believe her, but she was able to prove it with screenshots, messages, etc. The image that I had of my husband was forever tainted, and he left me with this mess. Because of bitterness about the betrayal and how offended I was by the mistress' lack of remorse and entitlement, I told her she wasn't getting a dime and that she shouldn't have hooked up with a married man. She kept harassing me, and when it wasn't going to work, she went to my husband's family to put pressure on me to give her what she wanted. She even tried to involve my kids, leveraging her silence for money. I knew that once I gave her money, she would come back, so I told them myself. My husband and I had well-paying jobs, lucrative investments, savings, and I got a sizable amount from the life insurance policy. I consulted a lawyer, and while she could prove the affair, it didn't prove paternity, and since my husband wasn't on the birth certificate, nor could she produce that my husband acknowledged the kid, she had no case. After my lawyer sent her a strongly worded letter, I didn't hear from her for a while, and I thought it was over until my oldest, Alex, who's 19, female, came to me and said that she did a DNA test with the mistress behind my back. She said that she did it because she wanted to get this resolved. The kid deserved to know who their father was and get the financial support that they were owed. My husband had a will that stated each of his kids were to split an inheritance that they would only have access to when they went to college, and they couldn't get full control of until they were 25. When the results came back, proving that my husband was indeed the father, the mistress took me to court. It was a long legal battle, but eventually a settlement was made. I sat Alex down and explained to her that her inheritance would be split 50-50 between them and her half-sibling as part of the settlement agreement. When she asked if my other kids had to split theirs, I told Alex no. My husband's will stated that it had to be split up, but it didn't say it had to be equally, and until each of the kids turns 25, I had full control. Alex was upset, saying that it wasn't fair. I countered, saying that it wasn't fair that my other two kids had to get a lesser share because of my eldest choices, and if they wanted their full share, they shouldn't have done a DNA test. There's still plenty of money for Alex to finish college, she just won't have that much after that, and I do plan on dividing my own estate equally in my own will. All of this Alex knows, but they're still giving me the cold shoulder. My own siblings think that it wasn't fair, and I'm punishing Alex for doing right by her half-sibling, but I don't see it that way. Am I the jerk? Am I the jerk for telling my wife I didn't enjoy the birthday surprise she planned for me? I'm 36 male. My wife, who's 37, said she would plan something for my birthday. She asked if there was anything I wanted to do, and I told her no. At 36, I don't have any expectations for my birthday. We've been together for 10 years, married for 7. We have 3 kids under 6, so planning activities can be tricky. Traveling is tough, and staying in uncomfortable places with kids is stressful. So my wife plans something, packs an overnight suitcase for everyone, and loads up our van. We drive an hour and 45 minutes to a small town, then take a long, rocky, narrow road to a tiny cabin Airbnb in a remote, heavily wooded area. It's a single room with a gallery kitchen, 1 bed, and a pull-out couch. It's cramped with 3 kids. There's not much to do, no walking trails, and nowhere to drive except back to that awful road. I'm asked to drive back to get dinner from a nearby bar. I'm surprised, and not in a good way. I don't say anything bad about the property, but I can't hide my feelings, and she can tell I'm not a fan. We unpack, walk around, she has some gifts for me to open in front of the kids. We have cake, and then spend 4 to 5 hours trying to pass the time. After that, we go through the tiresome routine of getting all 3 kids to sleep, which is extra hard in a tiny cabin. By the way, I sleep on an air mattress because our youngest co-sleeps and needs mom at night. We wake up early because the cabin has no curtains. My wife tells me we're going to do a 5K bubble and color run. I smile and say, okay, let's do it. Not wanting to sound disappointed, but probably failing to hide it. I'm not a runner. I've never said I wanted to run, but whatever, let's try it. We pack up and head to the event. It's a small, cheap event on a hot day. Our 2 youngest don't want to do this, but we start the race anyway. Our oldest takes off, causing us to lose him twice. I frantically try to catch up, ending up sweaty, winded, and with aching knees. Not fun. After my wife finishes with our other 2 kids, we walk around a small street fair and let the kids play. It's fun, but I'm ready to rest. My wife tells me we're supposed to meet friends at the beach later, so we have a 2-hour drive back, hoping the kids nap in the car. I take a nap, feeling quiet and not in a good mood. We get to the beach and 2 of our kids start melting down. I'm done with the day and would prefer to go home. Eventually they chill, we find some shade and it's fine. When we get home, it's a mad dash to get the kids showered and in bed, while I unpack, clean the car and the house. My wife asks what's wrong, and I tell her I appreciate her effort, but it didn't feel like she planned it with me in mind. I don't like running. I want comfort when traveling with the kids, and it was exhausting. It was a lot of effort for something not enjoyable. She flips out, devastated that I didn't enjoy it, and angry at me for not just being grateful somebody planned something out for me. Not the jerk. I mean, it's nice that your wife planned this surprise birthday trip for you, but at the same time, some situational awareness on her end would have been nice. After being together for 10 years, she should know what you probably are or are not going to enjoy. She shouldn't flip out that you didn't like the trip. I mean, that's the risk she takes when she doesn't consult with you or include you in any of the planning. At least you were being honest with her. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's fiance that the only obligation I have towards her is to treat her with respect? I'm 26 female. My brother, James, who's 27, recently got engaged to his fiancée, Laura, who's 32. My brother and I have always been super close. Throughout the years, he had many girlfriends, and I generally made it a point to get along with them. I liked the vast majority of them, so that task wasn't hard. I had good and close relationships with most of them while they were still dating James, and remain in close contact with two even after their breakup, with James' permission, of course. One being his high school girlfriend Diane, who's 26, and the second being his baby mama, Sophie, who's 29. When James started dating Laura 2 years ago, I also tried to get close to her, but I just couldn't bring myself to befriend her. Laura and I are completely different people and have little to nothing in common. She isn't a bad person by any means, but just not someone I would want to hang around with or talk to on a day-to-day basis. At the end of the day, she made James happy and was a decent stepmom to my nephew, Rio, who's 4. So me liking her as a person wasn't really important. I also had little to no interactions with her, since whenever I visited James at their apartment, she would claim she was too busy to hang out with us, so I would mostly only see her during family reunions and holidays. After they got engaged, Laura asked me to be her bridesmaid. I refused since I already had a part in the wedding as the groom's sister, was happy with my current position, and didn't feel like spending thousands to go on a bachelorette trip where I didn't know anyone. Last month, James' ex, Diane, also got engaged and asked me to be her maid of honor. I agreed since Diane has been a close friend of mine for years, and I was honored that she wanted me to have such an important role in her wedding. When Laura heard about this, she called me saying that I was really immature for rejecting her request to be a bridesmaid, but agreeing to be Diane's maid of honor. I told her that Diane was my childhood friend, so this was different. Laura then began to interrogate me and asked if Diane and James were the ones getting married, would I also refuse her request and be content with only being the groom's sister in the wedding party. I told her that situation was irrelevant since it'll never happen. Laura continued to bombard me with questions before I finally told her that as her future sister-in-law, my only obligation towards her is to treat her with respect, and I'm already doing that, so I don't understand what more she wants from me. After hearing that, Laura ended the call and blocked my number. Her friends are now harassing me and telling me how awful I am for saying that to Laura. I'm genuinely confused since I don't think I've said anything remotely awful or offensive, but I might be missing something. Am I the jerk? Update. I decided to call James, like some of you suggested. I explained to him the entire situation with Laura and sent him screenshots of the texts her friends keep sending me. He was surprised since Laura never mentioned it and said he'd get back to me. Instead of calling me back, James showed up at my apartment an hour ago. He told me that he talked with Laura about the entire situation and he finally understood what made her act that way. Turns out, when James' friend group held a get-together last month, some of his childhood friends were reminiscing and mentioned how they always thought James and Diane would get back together eventually, and how odd it was that they are now both engaged to different people. Another friend also mentioned how James and Diane were clearly a better fit and tried to prove his point by pointing out how I like Diane better than Laura, and since I'm basically the female version of my brother, that must count for something. Apparently, while James was completely unaware that this conversation happened, Laura overheard the whole thing. Instead of telling James what she overheard, Laura fixated on what those friends said and tried to use my approval like some sort of weird competition to prove that she was better than Diane. So when I agreed to be Diane's maid of honor after I refused to be her bridesmaid, she kind of spiraled and tried to use her friends to pressure me and make me feel bad for not joining her bridal party. Although James understands what led Laura to act this way, he is mad at her since she went about it in the worst way possible, and this entire situation could have been avoided had she communicated with him like an adult. He told Laura that he needs some time alone to process what went on, so he'll be sleeping in my apartment tonight and meeting her tomorrow morning. By the way, I ended up showing him this post, and he said that as far as he's concerned, I'm in the clear, but he did call me an idiot for not calling him earlier and instead sharing what went on with strangers on the internet. Am I the jerk for being rude to my stepdaughter and banning her from eating with the family? I have 2 stepdaughters, Scarlett, who's 18, and Ava, who's 16. Scarlett is an amazing singer. She's been in some kind of voice lessons since she was 10, and she just graduated from one of the best performing arts schools in the state, where she went on a full scholarship since 6th grade. She has a YouTube channel where she sings that she started to make money from and was accepted into some very prestigious music schools. Additionally, she's been working paid gigs for the last 2 years and makes at least $500 to $1,000 per week, more in the summers. She's even been the opening artist at a few concerts. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just saying she's an objectively good singer. Ava, on the other hand, is not a good singer. She likes to believe she is, and she might become one if she actually stuck with voice lessons or choir classes, but she always quits after 1 to 2 weeks because they're bullying her, giving her constructive feedback. I've seen the notes her classmates and teachers have given her. Ava also likes to sing very loudly and or at bad times. For example, if she feels that we're too quiet at the dinner table, she starts singing loudly. It doesn't sound good, and I honestly don't know how she doesn't hear it. If you ask her to stop, she keeps going, and if you're blunt and say stop, that it doesn't sound good or we don't want to hear it, she keeps going and gets even louder just to annoy you. If we're in the car and we don't let her choose the songs, she'll loudly sing whatever she wants, not what's playing, to annoy us, and responds the same way to us telling her to stop. The only person she listens to is her dad. A few weeks ago, we were trying to eat and she was singing again. I told her to stop and she refused, so I took her plate and told her from now on, she's no longer allowed to eat at my table. She can eat in her room, the backyard, her car, the garage, wherever she wants to, as long as we can't hear her from the dining room, and that this will continue until she can behave appropriately at the table. My husband and I argued about it, but he's not home for dinner, so there isn't much he can do about it. Today, she was eating lunch with us and started singing again. I told her to stop, and she didn't listen, so I again took her plate and told her to eat somewhere where we can't hear her if she doesn't want to act appropriately. Ava argued that she's a better singer than Scarlett, and that Scarlett sings all the time. I was done with her BS, so I asked her how many times someone other than her dad has actually asked her to sing, not even paying her to be there. Just ask her to sing, or how many performing arts schools she's gotten accepted to. She's applied to many. She started to cry, and my husband wants me to apologize for being rude to her and is insisting I allow her to eat with a family again. Am I the jerk? Okay, for almost the entirety of this story, I was ready to say not the jerk until the very end. So her sister gets to sing at the dinner table, just not her? I mean, I think it's weird to sing at the dinner table anyways, but if you have a double standard going on here, then you're the jerk. Ava is younger than her sister. Sometimes it takes some time to get better at something, and acting rude to her and discouraging her because you clearly don't like her makes you a jerk. Either ban singing at the dinner table completely, or keep your mouth shut and invoke the thumper rule. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Everyone sucks here. Ava just because she sounds really annoying, and you because you're a parent and she's a kid, and you've, seemingly repeatedly, told her she's not good at something she's passionate about, and not in a nice way. Encourage her to follow other pursuits, and definitely continue to enforce that it's inappropriate to loudly sing when others want a quiet meal. But brutally laying out that she's rubbish at the one thing she's passionate about and rubbing in her failure to succeed is pretty harsh when it's coming from a parental figure, especially when it's followed up with, "And now go eat alone." OP. We've tried to put her in lessons to improve, but she refuses to go, or she quits after 1 to 2 weeks because she thinks they're bullying her by giving her constructive feedback. She's tried soccer and she's actually good at it, but refuses to try out for the school team. And with her tendency to quit after a couple of weeks because the teacher tried to teach, we're not going to pay for her to join a club team. My parents wasted all their money and now expect me to support them financially. I, 31 female, have been living out of home since I was 18. I left uni with a mid-size amount of debt, but I've managed to pay it off and I'll also save over £8,000 over the last 10 years. I have scrimped and saved to get to this point. My parents are good people and I love them, but they have made some terrible financial decisions over the years. When my grandmother passed, her house was sold and my parents received about £90,000. They treated my brother and I to an amazing Christmas and a lovely holiday. They also renovated parts of our family home. After all this, they still had about £50,000 left and, by their own admission, frittered away the remaining money rather than saving it. By the time I started uni 2 years later, I was told that I would need to take out student loans to pay for my fees. 8 years ago, they told us they were going to sell the family home and downsize to a flat. They managed to sell the house quickly and received about £250,000 for it. But there was nothing on the property market that they liked, so they decided to rent for a while until they found something they did. Within 3 years, all of the money was gone. Again, frittered away with nothing to show for it. Now they're in their 60s and renting for the foreseeable future with only a small pension each. My dad will be forced to retire next year, and they can't afford their current rent without his salary. They have asked me for loans multiple times just to tide them over until payday. They do always repay the loans to me, but I've started feeling resentful of giving them money at all. My partner and I are trying to buy a flat, and all of my friends who currently own property have received help from their parents with a deposit. Not only are my parents unable to help me with this, they actively borrow money from my savings on a regular basis. Earlier this week, we were having a family meal for my dad's birthday. My parents were asking my partner and I about our property situation and asked if we would consider buying a 2-bedroom flat so they could move in with us and not worry about rent. I laughed at first, thinking that they were joking, but then realized they were serious. I told them that we wouldn't be doing that, as A, we couldn't afford a 2-bedroom flat, and B, even if we could, it's not my responsibility to house them. My dad argued that he and my mom had provided for me over the years, and now it's my turn to repay them. I told them that I've been virtually on my own since I turned 18, and just because they made poor financial decisions over the years, I shouldn't have to foot the bill. I said that I resent the fact that they could have helped me with my uni and maybe even a flat deposit, but instead, they spent their way into a life of living hand to mouth. This did not go down well. Both of them erupted at me and called me ungrateful. My brother told me that I was being entitled. Even my partner said I was overly harsh. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. Your language was harsh, but your parents misspent at least £300,000 according to your post, and now they expect to live for free off you for the next 30 years or so? No. Stop lending them money immediately. Your parents need to learn to live within their, albeit limited, means. Goodbye, Internet. At my last job, my main duty was the IT manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for about 3.5 years at that point, and I was trusted by everyone. If I had something important to say, people listened. During lockdown, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hires a young, I only tell the truth, even though you won't like it, narcissist as his second in charge. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second. In the first 3 months, Bonehead upset everyone, to the point where 15 people from various positions leave the company to find other jobs. This is during lockdown, where a lot of people were thankful they had a job, and 15 people were like, I'm going to risk finding another job in the middle of lockdown rather than stay here. He was that bad. As Bonehead started to upset our customer base and our sales started to suffer, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point. So, longtime vendors were replaced with friends and family of Bonehead, services were downgraded or cut, pay plans for the sales department were jacked with, and further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day, Bonehead comes to me and tells me to stop doing safety checks and maintenance repairs on our products so sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected and went to the owner, but as the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money, he threw his support behind Bonehead's idea. A few months of this goes by, and after he fired one of my employees on my birthday because he refused to give Bonehead access to the server room, it was restricted to me, owner, and employee. I knew it was time to go. I find a new job, put in my 2 weeks notice, and of course, Bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday, the day after I put my 2 weeks in. I decide it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks and inform them that I'm out of there, while filing with the state over my wages being withheld. As I'm walking out the door, Bonehead reminds me I'm no longer an employee of the company and not to get involved with the company's affairs and possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. My new job pays more, less hours, less stress. Fast forward to this Monday, I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and will get cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see my account is paid. So after a few back and forth, I find out that I'm still the point of contact for my last job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact. If they cannot get one, they will be forced to suspend their service. I repeated, I'm not allowed by threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs and left it at that. An hour later, a buddy I know who still works there called me and told me they had to stop working as their internet service had shut off. I played stupid, but it took 3 days to restore it. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's food on his birthday and getting him banned from a restaurant? I, 18 female, have been dating my boyfriend John, who's 20, for a little under a year. We have a pretty toxic-free relationship, but there's quite a bit of tension when it comes to me being vegetarian. I've been vegetarian since I was 11, and I have very strict morals around it. The one thing John has a problem with is me refusing to spend money on meat. Ever since I started making my own money, I swore to myself that I would never spend a cent of it on meat. On our dates, we usually split the bill, and sometimes he pays for it all. I told him if he orders something meat-free, I'd happily pay for both of us, but he never does. When he pays for my food, it's when I've spent money on the activity. Normally concerts or festivals. That's me paying 120 euros on tickets and him spending maybe 50 euros on food. His birthday was a few days ago, and we went out for dinner at his favorite fancy restaurant. He got the most expensive steak they had, along with a side salad and a bottle of wine. When we finished our food, I asked the waiter to split the bill, and John looked at me shocked. He asked if I was joking, and I said no. Then he told me he thought I was going to pay since it was his birthday, and he didn't budget for the meal. I asked him why he thought I would pay since I've been very clear about my rule, but he couldn't give me a reason other than it being his birthday. I told him I'd pay for the wine and the side salad, but he'd need to pay for the steak. He was furious with me and stormed off to the bathroom. I paid for my meal, the wine, and the salad, and I waited for him to come back, but he didn't. After waiting for 20 minutes, I left. I found him sitting on a bench near where we parked the car. I asked him why he left and reminded him he needed to go pay. He looked shocked when I said that and asked me if I didn't pay. I told him I had paid for everything but the meat, and he lost it. He started yelling at me, telling me I was selfish, that I needed to grow up. I stayed calm and told him he needed to go back and pay. He scoffed and walked away. I ended up driving home without him. Now he's saying it's my fault that he can't show his face in his favorite restaurant since he dined and ditched. It's a pretty small restaurant, so he'd 100% be recognized and kicked out. So, am I the jerk? Edit. To the people commenting about me not treating him on his birthday, yes, I did. I even dipped into my savings for his present. Not the jerk. Ignoring the vegetarian stuff, who orders the most expensive steak possible and then expects their partner to pay for them without having checked prior? And then storming off to the bathroom expecting that to pressure you into paying for it? OP, I hope you can see all the huge red flags here. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.